right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Hamilton County Solid Waste Policy Committee meeting, March 15, 2023. Welcome, welcome, everyone. As always, we'll do a round robin in the room. We'll start with Greg Custerman.
Greg Custerman, Health Commissioner for Hamilton County Public Health.
Commissioner Denise Reha.
Tony DiPiccio, Waste Generator Representative.
Michelle Waltz, Hamilton County Research. Jill Claire, Stenographer.
How many people? General member interest.
Magna, City of Cincinnati.
Matt Waller, Corey Township.
Ashley Love, Hamilton County Environmental Services.
Paige Bradford, Community Specialist.
West Street, Common Sense.
Perry Whitmonkey.
Jim Mara for Oxbow.
Malika Kosas, Legal Owners of Cincinnati. Gabby Caspen, Stitch to Go. Sally Dan Miller, Sierra Club, Miami Group.
Bob Getter, Public Citizen.
There you go. Don't brag, Bob. Don't brag. Sharon Moore, Hamilton County Resource. Yvonne Shen, Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office.
Tom, City of Cincinnati,
Great. Thank you all for coming. Our first order of business is a proclamation for Bob Getter. So Bob, if you would please come forward. A proclamation to thank you for your years of service to the Hamilton County Solid Waste Policy Committee. So I think I'll just read the whole thing. I don't always, but I think I will on this page.
Well, thank you.
There's quite a bit of information here about your service, not only to the county, but otherwise. Proclamation in honor of Bob Getter. Whereas Bob Getter served the people of Hamilton County as a member of the Hamilton County Solid Waste Policy Committee from 2019 to 2023, serving as the vice chair since 2020. And whereas Bob has committed more than 45 years of his life to solid waste management, providing crucial technical insight and expertise to move towards a zero waste future. And whereas Bob led the Beyond 34 initiative with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation to increase Cincinnati recycling and diversion rate. And whereas, at a young age, Bob showed a passion for waste diversion, operating 17 recycling centers across Cincinnati, at first as a volunteer from 77 to 79, and then as the manager of operations from 1979 to 1983. And whereas Bob has served on several committees to pursue policies to manage and divert solid waste, such as Environmental Protection Agency, Sustainable Materials Working Group, and the Anaerobic Digestion Working Group, in order to help bring an anaerobic digestion facility to Hamilton County. And whereas Bob in his service to Hamilton County contributed innovative and progressive ideas to push Hamilton County's diversion rate higher and improve waste reduction infrastructure, now therefore be it proclaimed that the Board of County Commissioners recognizes and appreciates Bob Getter's public service to our local community through his role on the Hamilton County Solid Waste Policy Committee, and be it further proclaimed that the Board of Commissioners of Hamilton County does hereby proclaim today, March 15th, 2023, as Bob Getter Day in all of Hamilton County.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm honored.
There you go. You're welcome to say a few words if you'd like.
Well, I really appreciate the time served with this policy committee. Thank you for just giving me the time of day. I know that we extended many of our meetings over time because of my voice, and I thank you. And all of the effort was really for the public's voice and the environmental issues for the 800,000 residents of the county. So I really appreciate that, and I wish you luck as you go forward with the plan of action that you have for discussion today and throughout this year. So
thank you.
I thank you for tolerating my voice.
We appreciate your service.
And thank you for the honor.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a? Okay, thank you. On behalf of the board.
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate it. All right, the clerk's report. The approval of the minutes is attachment A. You've all had a chance, I hope, to look at the minutes. Are there any corrections, deletions, additions? If not, I'm going to entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the minutes is provided in the meeting packet.
Second. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. All right, we're gonna move into public comment. I've got 4 speakers cards, I would call them, but they're speaker sheets today. We're missing our secretary. So Marie Kokosis is first. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, Marie Kokosis of the League of Women Voters of the Cincinnati area. Hamilton County Solid Waste District needs a bold, progressive plan to address our solid waste crisis. This plan before you today is not it. Many strong components have been rejected from inclusion in the plan. It is estimated that 52 to 54% of the waste coming into the county comes from out of district, that is, from surrounding counties that do not have their own landfills. Our fence-line communities near the Coleraine site are being subjected to truck traffic causing noise and dust, odors, and air and water pollution. And let me switch to the next page here. Hamilton County residents are burdened with the causes of these adverse health effects from this facility, i.e., we're being burdened by something that's coming outside the county, which we don't think is fair. We have proposed an increase for Tier 2 tipping fees from $2 per ton to $4 per ton. This is for out-of-district waste. The increase in revenue could fund additional waste diversion programs for the solid waste district. One, for example, could be helping communities to have a weekly recycling pickup and/or a litter pickup. The Solid Waste Caucus gave a whole long list of projects. The organics that come to the landfill are estimated to be 23% of the waste stream. These organics could be diverted to a compost facility. Funds from the increased tipping fee could fund a compost program. In addition to waste diversion, this could result in a decrease in methane at the landfill. Methane is a greenhouse gas. The proposal for access to universal collection of waste, recycling, and organics has now been relegated to aspirational status. This is a short-sighted omission. Just out of curiosity, I looked up the definition in Merriam-Webster as to what the aspirational means. It says, and I quote, having a desire to achieve high level of success or social status, close quote. I guess that's a positive statement to use in describing what we think should be in the plan, not just an aspirational goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marie. Our next speaker is Tim Mara.
Thank you. The following comments are on behalf of the Oxbow Land Conservancy, which owns a 1,400-acre preserve at the mouth of the Great Miami River. It is Oxbow's position that the draft plan update is inadequate as it presently stands because it fails to include more aggressive measures to divert waste from landfills, fails to include an increase in Tier 2 fees for out-of-county but in-state waste, and does not include a siting strategy. I can't cover all of that in 3 minutes, so I'm going to focus on the significance of not having a sufficient siting strategy. First, without a siting strategy, the best of this county's environmental resources are vulnerable to degradation and even ruination because we don't have siting criteria. These special areas include, but are not limited to, western Hamilton County, but that is the most threatened area. Over the years, Hamilton County taxpayers have invested millions of dollars to purchase, improve, and maintain several large county parks in the western Hamilton County area, as well as numerous smaller parks and preserves. And Oxbow has acquired and preserved land on both sides of the state line at no cost to taxpayers, but at great sacrifice by our members and supporters. All of these preserved public and private lands are in areas which are especially rich in water resources, including the Whitewater River Valley, where water is of very high quality and which provides habitat for threatened and endangered fish and other wildlife. Because of their proximity to the Bond Road landfill, those resources are threatened by the proposed expansion of the landfill, which is quite close to and uphill from the Whitewater River. To strengthen the defense of any decision the county might make to reject any new or expanded solid waste facility in the western Hamilton County, you need a well-reasoned siting strategy to guide your decision-making. In addition to the important environmental resources Another reason why you need an important a good siting strategy is the issue of environmental justice. Environmental justice is the recognition that historically undesirable land uses that no one wants to live near, such as landfills, have been located disproportionately near communities of vulnerable people, including racial minorities, low-income populations, and senior citizens, all of whom lack the resources to fight those undesirable land uses. As a result, those vulnerable communities have been at risk for health issues, have lost some portion of their property values, and have been further burdened by noise, odors, light pollution, and other impacts on the quality of their lives. And Western Hamilton County is a clear example of environmental injustice. It has been burdened by the Monsanto Plastics plant in Addiston, the Gulf Refinery in Hooven, and have been further burdened by noise, odors, light pollution, and other impacts on their lives. And also there are small landfills and now the Bond Road thing. These are in close proximity to the Bond Road site. Numerous vulnerable communities exist there, including the well-known poor communities of Hooven and Elizabethtown, and several sizable mobile home parks inhabited primarily by senior citizens and/or people of low income. They're especially deserving of protection, which protection would be more defensible if backed by good siting criteria for solid waste facilities in close proximity to vulnerable communities. The draft plan includes none of that and fails to meet the needs of Western Hamilton County and should not thus be submitted for ratification until further amended. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Next speaker is Debbie Castens.
I wasn't expecting to speak, so this may be all over the place. I'm from Ditch to the Dump, which is opposing the Bond Road landfill. Tim hit it all pretty good. That area was a beautiful area. They have already begun to strip the trees. The road is unsafe. There is so many pockets of landfills and not just landfills, but there's construction landfills, there's a coal plant, there's everything on the west side of town. And basically the only reason that dump, this landfill, is going to be there is because of zoning. If that area had been zoned, I can guarantee you that landfill would not be on Bond Road or on Sand Run Bond Road. I do live in Indiana, and I do come down Sand Run to get to where I usually shop, Harrison, Ohio, in Ohio. It's a very dangerous road. Our safety has never been considered. And so I guess, along with Tim, the siting things need to be there for our safety, because the government's role is our safety. Not just Ohio people's safety, but Indiana's too. I worked for the Cincinnati, Hamilton County for 37 years. So I did pay my dues. The other thing is my question on the fee. My question to you and my confusion to you is why you object to it, if any of you do, because that money can be used for recycling, for education, for all these things that are so important to Hamilton County. We're too far behind the times. Mark Twain once said, if I die, I want to be in Cincinnati because they'll find out 2 years later. And that's where we're at. We're far behind the times on recycling and on landfills. You got two within 12 miles of each other with no rules. I mean, you got the EPA, but we'll leave that. I can't comment there. So that's all I have to say is please start considering us people out there. You know, it's right on the line. It's very obvious why it's there. Indiana can't say anything because it's in Ohio, and you're right on our line. It's closer to me than any of you, or to most people that live in Western Hamilton County. So please think of us.
Our latest card is Sally Dana Miller.
Roxanne Miller, Sierra Club. I don't have a long speech today. I did write a letter, and I sent it to most of you. A few of you, I didn't have your addresses. I apologize. But I think you got it from Denise. So, hopefully you got the Sierra Club letter recently. Speaking for Sierra Club Miami Group, we would like to continue to stress moving in the most progressive manner towards diversion of waste in order to work towards a goal of zero waste. We all bandy about that term, zero waste, but we're not really achieving it. You know, I bought a sandwich yesterday in a number 1 package. I am not achieving it myself. In order to achieve that in the near future, we support raising the Tier 2 fees. We can do something with it. There is a long list of things that we can do, and we can do it now. We have to start thinking smart. In order to fund those programs, now, we need to create a quick plan. And that would be implemented starting in 2024, not in 2030 or beyond. I mean, we just cannot wait. We are so far behind other states, other municipalities. We accept waste from all surrounding counties. 50% of our daily landfill take is from counties other than Hamilton County in Ohio. We need to get with the program, and we need to leverage the out-of-county garbage coming in. Leverage it. Why should we be the dumping ground and not get anything out of it? I really stress that we should do that. We also are concerned by the impact of environmental justice issues if we do not move forward with bigger and bolder diversion programs now. This time around, let's not wait 5 more years. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody online? Okay, thank you. And we are gonna take up, the plan update, in a couple minutes, so it is on the agenda. But before that, we've got resource revenue updates and analysis, attachment B. Michelle, I'm gonna let you talk to that.
Sorry, it's not as easy to find my attachments. So we have 2 different comparisons here. We have 2021 compared to the full year of 2022, and then we also have the first month of 2022 compared to the first month of 2023. So I'm mostly, since it's only 1 month, I'm just going to stick with the full year comparison. If you compare the whole year of 2022 with the whole year of 2021, we had about a 3% increase in revenue. We saw about a 2% increase in tonnage. We saw a 3% decrease in in-district waste, so the waste coming from within Hamilton County, and we saw a 5% increase in out-of-district waste. Any questions about that?
Questions? Thank you. You don't need any action from us? All right. The next item is the policy items for discussion. The first one is to fill the position of vice chair for the policy committee. Bob was our vice chair, so we need to fill that spot. So Michelle, walk us through this process, please.
So, for the vice chair position, this person would run the meetings, should our chair be absent, and that's pretty much the obligation that you're taking on as the vice chair. It isn't, there's no stipulation in Ohio Revised Code that only certain members vote, all members would vote. It would just be the person who would run the meeting should our chair be absent.
Okay, so I'm looking for interest in anyone, interested in being the vice chair of the committee.
Interested, I'd like to nominate Trustee Waller, who is the only other elected official on the group to serve as vice chair.
Yeah, I'd be willing to do that. Appreciate the nomination.
All right, we have a nomination. Do we have a second for the nomination?
I'll second that. Good idea.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Well, this is easy. All right, so we're gonna vote. Everyone in favor of Matt Waller becoming the vice chair of the committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, congratulations, Matt.
I'll abstain, but.
Yeah, there you go. No conflict of interest there. All right, well, welcome to the role. Yep. All right, the next item is the Hamilton County Solid Waste Plan update. So we have a number of issues to discuss here, the timeline, the changes that are in response to what we've heard through the process by way of community input, and then the ratification. So Michelle, walk us through these three things.
Of course. So, this is something that you've seen before, but my last slide is a little bit different. So this is just a really brief update of big picture where we are in the timeline. So as you remember, this process started back in May of 2021. We've gone through a lot of work since then. We are currently in this mid area. This is not the scale, so to speak. But we're currently at the tail end, really, of starting ratification, submitting to Ohio EPA after the 90-day ratification, and then for approval. So I did want to go over, because if you remember, you approved the timeline back at a previous meeting, and we said maybe we'll start ratification in March, maybe we'll start ratification in May. So what I've done is the top green timeline is what it would look like if we started in March. The bottom green timeline is what it would look like if we started in May. So it's really up to the policy committee. The policy committee initiates ratification. Someone puts forward a motion, we think the plan is ready to go, and that initiates ratification. Then staff will reach out to all 48 communities. We'll send letters. We'll also send emails to the clerks, our main contacts, but we copy the other ones. We send them sample resolutions, so they it's easy for them to vote on it, and we seek their approval. So should the policy committee decide today you want to start ratification, you could. Then we would initially go out. Technically, according to Ohio Revised Code, we have 30 days to do that, and I think that's just because it was written in the late 80s and it took that long to get a hold of people. It doesn't take us that long to get a hold of people. So I would imagine in a week we would have all the communities. It's actually 90 days from when the communities receive that plan. So, but we're just going to, count all the 90 days the same because it's too difficult to count 48 different 90-day tracks. So we will do 90 days for ratification. The communities will vote. If you'll remember, we have to get 60%, communities representing 60% of the population to ratify the plan. That has to include the Board of County Commissioners. Although they're not technically one of the 48 communities, we have to have the Board of County Commissioners approval, and we have to have the City of Cincinnati as the largest municipality. So then after the 90 days, the ratification period ends. We have to add a few more things at the end of the plan about the ratification, and then we send it to Ohio EPA for approval. They technically have 90 days to review as well. They've already reviewed it once, and they've been also keeping updated on the updates. So I don't imagine it would take them 90 days, but I can't speak for Ohio EPA. We receive their approval and the new plan starts. So this is the timeline we're at. We did, it would be up to the policy committee whether you wanted to vote today or you wanted to make some adjustments. We're going to be talking about some adjustments if you do. One thing we could do is meet in the middle and move the May meeting to April and start the ratification period earlier. The real benefit of that, of starting the ratification period earlier, is that we would not be hitting the summer sessions for all of these elected bodies, which sometimes meet less often. And so it may be a little bit more difficult to get them to vote. So moving it to April might be a good idea if there's tweaks that we still need to make, and you don't think the plan is ready quite yet. We could move the May meeting up to April and find a date, and so that is a possibility. Any questions about that? I know that's a lot on a slide, but that's the timeline.
Is that frequent, something you just said kind of rang a bell with me. Chlorine, we tend to be a little bit different sometimes. In summer, we actually meet twice a month instead of once a month. Are the other townships, kind of inversely related in their meetings?
I think that is unusual.
Okay. Because I think part of ours is for budget, for budget prep purposes and things like that. Summer's our busiest time for our process.
That is not true of the city or the county.
Okay.
Our budget plan, though,
Anderson doesn't take any.
Good itself, good job.
Slower, but not slow.
I'm thinking there may actually be more time during the summer for
elected officials to reach.
From my position, I agree, and I think from, not to speak for the other two Colerain, trustees, but I think that gives them, I think they're more amenable to additional research during that time period too. Now, I can't speak for the other townships, obviously, but I do think you're right with that.
Well, and I think we just closed the public comment period, so I don't think today is a wise move to ratify today. I don't think we've got the information we need, today, given that we just closed public comment. So the question will be, should we just go ahead and do it in May, or should we move it up to April to provide a little bit more time? So that's gonna be the question in front of us. But if you all don't mind, let's go through all three of these first, so that we've got the context around this, and then we'll make a decision as to when we wanna, have a ratification vote.
So, and one more slight question, so in moving it, is there another time for, public comment? Or is it the first time it's done? Because we react to those comments.
Right, so we had a lot of public input in the beginning of the plan, and so this is really the end, the final public comment. We can always have another public
Right,
comment, but according to Ohio Revised Code, we have fulfilled the obligation
Okay,
of
gotcha.
public comment.
Let's go to item 2.
Okay, so I have put together, in attachment C, some major highlights of, changes that have been made really since September, since the last time the policy committee voted on a plan to send it off to Ohio EPA. Well, since we got the comments back from Ohio EPA, I should say, you voted back in June. So, I did not put in this presentation, every single change, and I honestly didn't put every single change into attachment C either. Sometimes it was just, typos and those kinds of things. But I put in the major substantial changes. And so these are changes that we, from three sources really: Ohio EPA comments, things that we really have to change in order for them to approve our plan, and I'll stipulate that if you decide not to make those changes, because they may not approve our plan. And then changes from policy committee members, their input, and then also changes from just public input and public comment that we've received. So the one big change that a big item that we've heard a lot about is our aspirational diversion goals. This, again, is not something that is required by Ohio EPA. We are exceeding the state mandated diversion goals, but this is something that I really feel is important for resource to have in order to have a bar that we're trying to reach, right? Something that we can aspire to, that we can increase. Because right now we are trying to increase, but we don't have, a goal in mind that we're trying to reach. We received a lot of public input on that goal and decided it was best to break the goal up into residential and commercial. So really we have three sectors. We have residential, commercial, and industrial. Industrial already has, I think, an 84% diversion rate. To be honest, it's already really high, and we're going to continue with industrial programming, but that's not the area that we have the most potential to gain. We have the most potential to gain with residential and commercial sectors. Really, the commercial sector has the biggest volume, but we have a lot of room for improvement in residential as well. So what we've done is broken out the goal into residential and commercial. The residential sector, these are the 2020 diversion rates. 2020 is our baseline year, so that's why we're using that. And so the aspirational goals, this pushes those goals even further than we originally had. So this is additional tonnage, and trying to increase those areas. So this is one change that we made.
Can I ask you, what is the date associated with the aspiration?
So right now it's 2038, but we put in the text of the plan that a lot of that is going to happen in the first 5 years. So we could put an earlier date on it if we want. I think it's doable to put an earlier date on it, to be honest, but right now it's just a 15-year plan, so that's the 15-year goal.
Do an update every 5 years. It's kind of like, I was always kind of wondering about those goals that were so far out that nobody ever,
Yeah, we can make it 2030, that sounds solid. So the other area that we received a lot of public input on was doing some sort of universal waste and recycling. And And so by that, originally, if you remember, Bob Geddert's proposal was to make, residential recycling and waste collection curbside universal across every community in Hamilton County. We looked into, Hamilton County does not have the legal authority to do that. We can't go and tell the different communities you have to have curbside collection of waste and curbside recycling. But what we do have in the plan, and so what Bob Geddert and I sat down and kind of tweaked out, was incorporating in the technical assistance that we already have. So we already work with communities. For example, I worked with Colerain Township to help them set up curbside recycling. So we have that technical assistance, but tweaking language to make it more apparent that we're also working on waste and not just recycling. So we're also helping them get curbside waste collection, really more from a public health standpoint, so that people have waste collection and aren't hoarding their waste, or stealing service from somebody else. But then you'll notice this longer sentence in here is really coming up with template language that we could work with communities to make it easier for them to incorporate this into their bid specs. We review bid specs quite frequently, but, you know, having that language in there, because oftentimes communities don't have someone like Sue who's, you know, the expert in these bids, or someone, public works director, is doing 50 other things. So having that template language, I think, will be really helpful. And so this is, if you look at attachment C, this is incorporated in a few different areas. I'm really just highlighting it in this slideshow in this one area. We incorporated it in a couple different areas in the plan.
Michelle, my recollection is that the focus on this was on residential. Now we have a sentence in here about commercial waste.
Yeah, the commercial was in there originally, but yes, the big focus is on residential, but being able to help communities with commercial as well. We're not telling them they have to offer recycling for, or waste for their commercial properties. A big part that this comes in is in multifamily, which is something I'm going to talk about later on, but multifamily complexes are considered commercial. And so if a community is interested in offering this service to their commercial sector, then we could have template language that would help them with that. We do have the City of Cheviot and the City of St. Bernard, who, and the City of Indian Hill, but they really don't have many businesses, to be honest. But they already do have some waste collection for their businesses.
Are you suggesting we should put residential in there in
I
addition to commercial?
maybe, since the commercial was intended to focus on multifamily, just change it to multifamily.
I think we could add multifamily in there and add residential to make it clearer.
Yeah, broaden that out a little bit.
The other thing that we've received a lot of public input on is having a compost facility. We received quite a few public comments saying, we want curbside organic collection, and I do too, but we have to have a facility that can take it before we can get there. So this outreach priority, we had originally already said we were going to have food as our outreach priority. This is new language that we put into Chapter 5 about making it very clear we are going to follow the US EPA food waste diversion hierarchy. First, we're going to focus on reducing wasted food. That is the most environmentally impactful thing that you can do. And that we can do in many ways, but the big way that we're doing it right now is our Waste and Food Stop So That's campaign. So first, we're going to focus there. Then if we can't reduce that waste, then we're going to focus on rescuing that food and getting it to hungry people. That's the next level. And we're doing that already, but we're going to, focus that on helping support that food waste food rescue infrastructure. Finally, it is the end of life. If we can't reduce it and we can't rescue it, then you want to compost it or some sort of food waste processing. So this could be anaerobic digestion. This could be even facilities who make pet food out of food waste. I mean, there's lots of innovative things, but usually we kind of default to a compost facility. But we already have budgeted $150,000 into the first year of the plan, which would be next year, to investigate, try to initiate a public-private partnership, and see where that heads. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So,
I'm good with that as long as it isn't just limited composting option.
Yeah.
You mentioned a lot of other.
Yeah, I usually put food waste processing, because that's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to find a place to bring that food waste. So chapter 6 is the budget chapter, and, there were a few issues with our budget, and we've, made a few things explicit in there. One, we have, added the organic study into chapter 6. So this was originally in the plan, but it wasn't up in chapter 6. So we've, kind of made that clearer that that is gonna happen. The other thing that we did, based on, discussions with Commissioner Dreehouse and, the City of Cincinnati, was put in here, how to consider and when to consider a fee increase. So, let me check really quick. I don't remember if I put this in the next slide. No, sorry. So what we would do is conduct a midterm review. So first we would do the organic study in 2024. And this would look at what land is available, what technologies are available, you know, start really making this a reality. And then, by that, we would come up with prices. Does Hamilton County need to own this facility? Do we need to operate this facility? Hopefully not. Hopefully we would find a private sector, but if we don't, then, you know, that's, something we could step into. So we would have the costs of this. Do we need to buy the land? That kind of thing. So then we would conduct a midterm review of, the budget in 2026. So that's what this language says, is that in 2026, we conduct a review of that information from that, study, but also the budget, the financial needs of the district. So it's showing that, and then it says, you know, do we need to increase the fees immediately? If it does, it puts out the language from Ohio Revised Code of what we would need to do to make that happen. But then it also, at the end, says, believe it or not, 2026 is when we start this process all over again. So we will include in the next study, or in the next plan update, a full study on the impact of increasing those fees, not just increasing out of district, but do we increase in district, do we increase out of state? All those fees, you know, what would the impact be? Would it decrease waste? And if not, is it still worth increasing the fees, you know, for extra revenue, and what would those funds be spent on? So that's kind of in a nutshell, what that language says. And that's a lot of language that I tried to condense into a slide, so any questions about that?
Actually, I'm gonna step back just a little bit on the organics processing thing. I think I wanted the word post-consumer organics in there, because
Okay.
the anaerobic digestion process is really good for industrial, but everything I've heard, they say they're not gonna take anything post-consumer, or very, very little. So I just wanna make sure that we, are looking at post-consumer.
I'm not gonna agree to that. I think that's too restrictive.
Well, I would add post-consumer and, that's gonna be, if we're gonna collect from people's houses, it has to be.
So could you, I don't understand the objection to that.
Because her wording that she put forth the first time was post-consumer, period, as opposed to organics that would be generated from other operations.
I don't want to exclude the other operations, I just wanna make sure other operations are not, we're not setting those at the exclusion of post-consumer.
So it's all of the above.
Right.
So,
What, maybe if you could add after organics there, in that paragraph you highlighted, or organics including post.
yeah, we don't wanna be
Exactly.
exclusive.
I don't
Yeah.
wanna be exclusive, I just
Yeah.
wanna make sure that you don't get there and you're like, oh,
No, right.
they didn't even think about that.
Yeah, okay, so including post-consumer.
You're talking about that last sentence,
Yeah.
organic, comma, including
Sound
post-consumer.
reasonable?
Yeah, including post-consumer.
Sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay, and I just wanna highlight this section too, because I have personally, and I think we have heard a lot about the fee increase and the rationale for it. it's twofold. One is to divert waste, if that would play out in that way, and the other is to have money available for the organics piece. And so it's really both. So the idea here is, as I understand it, to make the case for the organics. You know, how are we gonna do this? Are there private sector folks that would be willing to participate with us? That helps us hone in on what we're really looking at, what's the cost, where would we site it, which I think will be a big challenge. And then it leads into this conversation about fee increases. And we've got these three different, you know, we've got, the one we've talked the most about is out of district, but we've got the other two to consider as well. And so I feel as though looking at all of that at the same time makes some sense as we look at our budget and how we're gonna address the need for organics collection here in the future. And we're doing it in conjunction with the city. So I do wonder about, and I just wanna ask you about the time frame. Since you say that, we're gonna start looking to start on the next 5-year plan, in '26, I don't mean to put anybody in a panic, but could we push the date up to provide for the information related to the fee increase in the organics facility? Can we push that up a little bit, to get a little more aggressive in that space so that we're further along?
Yeah,
by the
so
time
have
we
it,
start to
instead of
do
the
that?
midterm review in 2026, have it in 2025?
I mean, it's a we talk about these things in mid-cycle reviews, but whatever is, I don't want to stress anybody out, but I do want to do something that's reasonable, but also shows that this is kind of where we're headed, and we'd like to make this a priority. So I know there's some research that has to go into this, by way of the organics piece and the diversion piece. So, you know, but I think 26 is pretty far out. I wonder if we could do
Absolutely.
at least 25?
Yeah.
Is that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I'd like to move it up just.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I think it's gonna be very difficult. But we can still do the review anyway, period.
Right.
Kind of where are we at that point in time? The feasibility study only partially completed.
And the language does say, contingent on the organic study being complete. So if for some reason it's not complete by 2025, which I would hope it would be, we would have that. We have it clearly stated here that we want to wait to get that.
Okay, well, let's, again, aspirationally say, let's push that date up then, and see if we can progress the date. Because these two things pull together.
The only other thing to keep in mind, this group imposed rules on processing type facilities, food composting and such are not popular. We had one try to go in Whitewater Township, thanks to lack of zoning and huge public outpouring of, concern. So we're entering a very, fun process as we encourage it. Where it ends up will not be exciting.
And years ago, there was an example, right, closed down
Yes,
in
on the west side as well.
West Side, yeah.
Yep.
On that same line, that Commissioner Treehouse was talking about, at the beginning of that line, it says compost facility. Right, that is page 2. Okay.
Hey, Michelle, and I just, for the benefit of myself really, and the group I suppose, this is food waste and yard waste,
That's
correct?
Yes.
So we talk a lot about food waste. I want to make sure that it's clear that organics is food and yard waste. Is there anything else that is incorporated into that?
Those are the two big ones. We did in the waste analysis, we used Waco from Franklin County, and they did find a large amount of compostable paper products. That's not exactly the words they used, but basically paper that you couldn't recycle that is compostable coming from the commercial sector. So that could be another piece. It's not really food or yard waste, but, and that has been identified as something that could be processed.
And another thing is like the digestate coming out of the anaerobic digesters. Like right now, the plan is to landfill it. So it could possibly also be.
Yeah, so can we be a little bit more, inclusive in this language about, because it's so food focused, so it includes food, but it also includes yard waste and maybe even other foods or streams in the future that are considered to be organic. So it's not so limited, or it doesn't seem to be so limited.
Right.
To just food waste.
usually, we think about it that way, in that class two is the food waste one, like, you have to get at least class two to accept food waste, but the other classes, you don't accept her.
Ready to move on? So the next piece is, multifamily recycling, and this, I believe also came a little bit out of, with Bob and I working together, but this, and also really from the zero waste plan that we put together with the city, the Green Cincinnati plan, sorry, zero waste committee. So we, really have identified that multifamily dwellings are not really included in a lot of communities' curbside recycling contracts. This is a pretty big portion of the population, especially in the city of Cincinnati. So, working with communities to try to incorporate those residents into those contracts and as best we can. As soon as working with multifamily properties is not easy, there's no silver bullet, they're all different, they all have different places to put their waste. A lot of times they were built not even thinking about where they're gonna put garbage, much less recycling. So it's challenging, but it doesn't mean it's not worth doing. So really trying to help out those multifamily residents and get more access to recycling.
Are there, does that really require, Matt, we'll use you as an example, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I don't know what you do in Colerain Township, but you guys provide collection to multifamily?
Yes, through, yeah.
Government, some of our governments don't.
It's through the contract,
Okay.
commercial though, I think that they have an opportunity to select because they're Republic and Waste Management and things like that.
Okay, I'm just saying there might be some obstacles to getting that done. There are existing policies, or actually existing ordinances or resolutions at some of the local governments.
But I think
More
one,
a comment than anything else.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. One useful thing that, and we've talked about this in Colerain with regards to, rare, rental properties and some of the, code enforcements. And I'll take a page out of FDR here with this Blue Eagle, showing my history background, is that I think even a list of multifamilies that are compliant and offer the highest level of recycling on like the website here, will be something that will, that'll be goal-oriented for people who may not think about it to push their multifamily units to become part of that. So that it's kind of a race to the top instead of a race to the bottom. I think there's a significant kind of pressure that comes, and then when somebody goes to rent something, they can go down the list and look and say, hey, these align to my goals, recycling goals, and something like that is administrative costs are very, very low, but it's, you know, like the old Blue Eagle, when you listen to what FDR said and you put it up on your door, I think that's a good I think there's always a tendency to want to find people if they do the wrong thing, but to really pressure them to do the right thing. Because at the end of the day, if I own an apartment building and I'm not on that list, I want to get on the list so I can be competitive with Mr. Casterman or Mr. Greenhouse, who also owns apartments that are on the list.
We already have that. Do we still have a list of? We've changed our website a few times, so I don't wanna claim that we do. But we have tried that before, where we have a list, and we have actually had a map of the, you know, trying to target people who are shopping for an apartment.
Sure.
But
And how did that?
I mean, we've actually been pretty successful in getting multifamilies, historically, getting multifamilies started with recycling. It seems like in the last couple years, I don't know if we've just picked all the low-hanging fruit or what, but it's been harder to get multifamilies. And Sue and Cher have been working to try to get a pilot multifamily in the city for over a year, probably.
We can't
Can't find anybody who will sign up to do it, so.
And we're willing to pay for the
Yeah, so
dumpsters,
it's
we're willing to pay for people to use LA collection, we cannot get anyone to try it.
Sign up to do what?
To recycle at their multifamily, we're looking at large multifamilies.
How large?
We're looking at the sweet spot, is about 20 units,
in that it would cost us about, in the city, about the same to provide 20 carts as it would to provide one dumpster. So it would, for equity purposes, that would be like similar savings for, 20 families. So yeah, looking at about 20. And, we just have been, we've been fishing for a year, and we cannot find a multifamily with 20 units who will try free recycling so that we can,
That's great.
isn't that crazy? I know.
I think, I don't think it's a matter of them not wanting to volunteer. I think your challenge is trying to find, not that they don't exist, but trying to identify them, because you're probably, you can look up Rumpke, well, here are the multifamilies, maybe even existing carts. Might be a source of information.
Well, I know where the recycling carts are in the city,
But
but I don't have.
I can tell you one multifamily that's been doing, multi-unit actually, has been doing it for 5 years.
I'm not saying there are not, it's just that we haven't been able to grow it at all,
Do what?
the multifamily recycling.
Grow it.
We just have more people who, who report that they would like to recycle in multifamilies, but they're unable to overcome the barriers, which are typically, the cost first, the place to put the dumpster, and then to monitor for contamination and continuous education until people all understand how to participate. Those are the three things that need to happen, for a multifamily to have recycling that's sustainable.
Well, and this language says that we will work with communities to incorporate multifamily recycling into, so, I think this language
We're doing that,
is, broad enough that, we need to continue that work, but it's not, so prescriptive that it's dictating. We definitely want to see multifamilies move into this space.
Have that on our website.
Okay.
Thank you, Sharon.
Okay.
Great idea.
Yeah.
It's a little buried, though. To me, and that's fine. All right, so this one, it was very hard to put on a slide, so I apologize. So there's a couple things that, Appendix O is really the budget financial analysis section. And there were, one comment that we got from Ohio EPA is that, if we look at our finances over the 15-year period, once we get to year 15, we're basically in the red. We're spending more than we have spent all the carryover, and we cannot have that happen. So we had that, and then we also had, a desire to add household hazardous waste back into the budget, more than $50,000, which is something that was discussed at the June meeting, something that Ms. Magnus was really strong on. We want to have some sort of program. So if you remember last time, we talked about a few ideas we had with hazardous waste. So we put $200,000 into the budget. This is less than the $400,000 we have to do to make our current program some sort of, huge program or do it 4 times a year. But it is enough that we might be able to do these smaller collections, like a partnership that we've got right now with the Recycling and Reuse Hub and Rumpke to do fire station collection of lithium-ion batteries. So really focusing on those most hazardous materials and trying to find smaller community outlets for them that are more accessible. So that's what and I'm sorry, I skipped right to the $200,000, but that, we had those two issues that we had to contend with to make adjustments to the financial analysis. So one thing that was in our favor is that Ali ran the numbers again, and because of our higher revenue in 2022, he was able to increase the projection of the revenue. So it used to be, I think, 3.56. He was able to increase it to 3.6. So that did help the overall line. We also did some cost adjustments based on what we currently have been spending on programs. And those were with the community composting budget. And these are all just small adjustments. So we reduced that from $20,000 to $10,000. We've not been spending that full $20,000. The target community, we've reduced from $30,000 to $20,000. We've not spent that full $30,000 since 2018 that we've had that line item. So, just reducing that budget because we've just not seen it. That needs to be such a large budget. And then the environmental enforcement, we, reduced it to average of, a little bit padded, of what we have spent. The average we've spent is $110,000 a year. We had 152 because I think even the sheriff's office didn't really know how much this was gonna cost them as far as, fuel and how much is he gonna be driving around, how much new equipment does he need. So we adjust that more in line with what we've actually been spending. The other things that we made some other adjustments in order to make that, be able to add that 200,000 in for household hazardous waste. We reduced the yard trimmings drop-off program. You'll have to hark back to remember when we talked about the yard trimmings program, but we have 3 sites. The west side location is currently located at an elementary school. It's not very efficient. It's not very cost efficient for us. I mean, Rumpke has to bring in people and trucks to this location to operate this site, and it's far more expensive than the other 2 sites. So that was identified in the analysis that this is something that, we need to look at and find a site that is better suited to yard trimmings drop-off than an elementary school parking lot in the weekend, and make it more cost efficient. So that is where that cost savings is coming from. And you have to remember, we don't really know the exact cost of these programs. We're going to be putting out RFPs and getting costs. We're just guessing at the cost. So a little bit just playing with numbers, to be honest. We originally had increased the overall business budget $100,000, so instead we increased it by $75,000. So it was a $100,000 increase, now it's a $75,000 increase, for a $220,000 total budget. We also reduced both the residential recycling and food waste campaigns by $25,000 each. And then we eliminated the $3,000 awards. Really, that takes a lot of staff time too, and I think staff time needs to be better spent on implementing waste reduction programs. And so as nice as they are, we can still give awards, but we don't need to have a breakfast and a whole ceremony. So those were the costs that, adjusted to make it so that we hit that full 15 years. We're still pulling from the carryover during that time. Things that we could change. We could have the house of hazardous waste only, if you want to put some money back into, say, the business program or the campaign, we could, instead of projecting that house of hazardous waste is going to cost us $200,000 through the whole 15 years, we could say we're going to budget that for the next 5 years, and then, and not project that out for the full 15 years, if that makes sense. And then that would help us pull that money back in. So, there's some adjustments that we can make, and I know that's a lot to kind of process, but do you have any questions about that?
Well,
So, I have an overall comment related to this one, because there are a number of different moving parts here. One is, we're gonna be talking about, a fee increase potentially, so that's going to play with these numbers moving forward. The other thing is that when we talked about the household hazardous waste program, I understand the desire to have the large events, but our study said that that was not equitable, and some communities had a very hard time participating in those events, and so the idea was to move to smaller events that are distributed throughout the county so that all residents have the ability to participate. And so I wanted to revisit that conversation a little bit. It's not that I'm necessarily opposed to the larger events, but we learned through the study that some people can't participate. And so I think we need to respond to that, and say, now that we know that, the idea of doing it at fire stations and having community partners participate with us so that we've got more localized drop-off locations, I think makes sense. So I would like to dig in just a little bit more on that, because we're spending a lot of money on this program. I know that you reduced it, but I want to just have a broader conversation with the policy committee about that program, and then the impact of keeping it in here to some of the other things that are being cut. So I know, Sue, you were advocating for that. So I kind of remember that conversation, but I want to also respond to the study that talks about this.
Well, the drop-off issues are, the same problems on equity for our yard waste programs. For right now, multifamilies who rely almost exclusively
exclusively on drop-offs, I mean, so, and the hazardous waste, relying exclusively on drop-offs would also be, a detriment. But we don't even have a hazard, I think you're talking about more advanced stuff than even just having a basic, like having the basic yard waste program and then expanding, but we don't even have a basic hazardous waste place that people can take stuff, year round. That, that they can take it there for free and not experience, have to pay a lot of money, which a lot of people just will not pay. If we don't signal by policy, by allowing them to drop off free that it's really important, then they interpret that as, oh, well, I'm allowed to throw this away, I guess I'll go ahead and do that. Even though those poisons concentrated in a landfill end up in the water and the air.
Yeah, I'm suggesting that we just do it differently, not that we don't do it, that we
Well,
just do it differently.
And I'm kind of suggesting we go back to having it year round and then add on more. Have a drop off that is accessible to people on more throughout the year would be better than just, and I do not think that the one time events are the solution either. I think having it more throughout the year is important, because when people have a carload full of stuff, they get rid of it right away. They do not hold on to it for a year. And it's mostly when, people are moving or somebody has passed away and they have to clean out a house, it's like that has to go now. So that's what I'm thinking, that we just don't even have that basic infrastructure year round for somebody to drop it off who wants to, to do the right thing. And then I agree with you that for those people who don't have a car in those some of those disadvantaged neighborhoods, we need to do more than that. But I wouldn't, but that is gonna take more money. And so studying it doesn't make sense to me when we had a good model that was better 10 years ago.
Model 10 years ago.
That was when we were open 9 months a year, 2 days a week for limited hours.
Down on Spring Road.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I believe that was, environmental enterprise.
We no longer have a vendor that we can use that can offer that service. So if we want to go to a model where we're open that period, we'll have to own land. We'll have to own a property that we can host that on. So we currently can't do that with our current, we don't have any place to put it, basically.
Yeah, when's the last time we bid it out?
Do you know off the top of your head, Chair? I mean, Chair bid it out like 3 times last year, so.
I did read last year.
We tried to do a curbside program where we would pay, you would call basically and say, I have hazardous waste, and we would come to your house to pick it up, and it was exorbitantly expensive.
If we had the exact same amount of people who wanted us to pick it up, it would have been $800,000.
Chair, Michelle, I know some areas of the country, they maybe do it in Ohio, probably do. Is that where they work with the local, like with Colerain Township, will say, okay, well, we'll sponsor, with the district, we'll sponsor, Household Products Day. And there's some sharing costs where, sorry, put you on the spot. But where Colerain Township would say, okay, we'll find the location, we'll man it with some help from the district, and the district would pay for the disposal costs.
So that's the plan for this year. Is we're starting, with 5 communities, to try that out, and then also having a big event, to catch the people who don't live in those communities. And then if that works out, we're hoping to do 10 into it and see how it works. Probably gonna be more expensive though. I mean, the household hazardous waste that we're getting are exceptionally more expensive.
But so we should not take money from household hazards. Everything else
suggesting and saying it's gonna cost more money, because that's not an area that we can play with.
Or take the 200 and reconfigure it. That's all I was saying,
Right.
not reduce so much as reconfigure the program to make, if we have 10 access points instead of one, we're spending 200 on one, once a year, whatever it is, instead of 10, what we learned was 10 is gonna be more equitable, and hopefully more people will participate. That's what we learned. So the cost of that actually, I thought, was lower, or maybe that wasn't incorporated. So I just think we need to flush this one out a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that you explained where some of these other, cuts that you make sense, right? We're not spending the money, we shouldn't budget for the money, it's not reasonable. But I wanna flush this one out a little bit more. It's kind of a both and, is what I'm thinking. But I don't have a firm idea, and maybe everybody else does, of the cost of what we're talking about, and what that 200 grand is buying us, and how it fits into the 5 sites moving into a 10-site strategy in the future.
And that's probably because we don't really have a firm understanding. So this is the first year that we've worked with 5 communities to try to have, test out this smaller drop-off. Test out, will the communities participate? Will they package up the materials correctly and safely? And our vendor is talking about actually going to the community and picking the material up. So rather than the community trying to load it into various vehicles, having the hazardous waste come to them, which is good. But we don't know exactly how much it'll cost. It won't be until this year, after we do those 5 events, that we figure out the cost. And so the 200,000 is definitely a generic number to see, could we do that for this amount of money? And then the other thing that we're simultaneously piloting is this partnership with the Hub and Rumpke of, can we have, like, fire stations take, like the lithium-ion batteries, which are what's causing all the fires in the MRF, could people bring their batteries to there? We have an extensive search engine on our website for many of the hazardous waste materials. It's just not all of my stuff from my grandma's basement, here it is. It's, you have to bring, your motor oil to one place. You have to bring, so it's not as convenient. But yeah, some people do it. I mean, we actually get far more people searching those outlets than we do coming to our hazardous waste program. So it's successful in that count. We haven't been doing paid promotions, so we're thinking about doing paid promotions. So it is, you're probably feeling that we don't know exactly how much that's going to cost, and we don't know exactly what program we're going to do, but we're going to try to do something and make it more accessible and more cost efficient.
So I thought we were increasing the homes.
We are. We increased it from 50,000, which was originally what was in the plan when we submitted to Ohio EPA last time, to 200,000.
It was reduced in our original plan, and now it's been increased back up.
Okay.
And are we due, I think we talked about this, are we due to do an audit on?
On hazardous waste?
Yeah, an audit of the trucks?
On the waste streams.
You mean waste
Yes. We're going to do the waste characterization studies this year. Yeah.
The last one was 5 years, is that, while I'm thinking of it, can you email that to me?
Sure.
When you get a chance. But this year, we're doing a study of, because I think the consumer habits over 5 years have tremendously changed, and this is something that Sue kind of keyed me in on, the fact that we have this inventory analysis of what goes down there, and I think that's going to be helpful in all of this.
But you can't really compare a few pounds of paper versus a few pounds of poison.
Right.
And say that, well, the impact is the same.
I don't want any of that, so you can all keep it.
Okay, any other questions related to item O?
One more.
All right.
So the siting strategy, this was originally not really in there. So a siting strategy is when the county is going to own a solid waste facility. We have to say, what is our strategy going to be for where this facility is sited? And so we've not had that in there because we've never owned a facility, but we're talking about possibly at least maybe owning it or buying the land or whatever. So If Hamilton County does initiate this public-private partnership, to have a food waste processing, if there's any possibility that we are gonna own that, we need to have a siting strategy in there. So what this does is authorizes the Board of Directors, which is the Board of County Commissioners, to adopt, publish, and implement said siting strategy. It's very similar to the authority that the policy committee gave, the Board of County Commissioners with the rules. So it's not saying this is our siting strategy, it's saying we're gonna form a committee, basically, and, create the siting strategy. It really does need to be, it can't be just something you just steal somebody else's. It really needs to be something where you've thought through what kind of process you wanna go through when, as it's been stated, when a facility like this goes into a community, where should this go? So this basically lays out a process of, a committee will be formed, and then it gives authority to the Board of County Commissioners to adopt that siting strategy.
Make that consistent with our previous discussions. Changing composting facility, I think, organics, processing for organic. Talk about broadening out the study to begin with. That could include whatever type of organics.
Yes, so, I apologize. So this first sentence is just mine on the slide. Everything below that is actually what is in the plan. So this was just me trying to explain what I was putting in there. So actually, it doesn't say composting, it says food waste processing. So you're correct, it could be any kind of, so are you talking about this bottom one?
I'm talking about both bottom two paragraphs.
Okay. So you think food?
I think organic, as we talked about, is a broader, more inclusive.
Got it.
On it, so.
Because if you issue RFP on food waste only, you're gonna get a totally different response on
So procedurally here, we are creating a committee to come up with a siting strategy potentially be adopted by the board and then the county commissioners.
And just a point of clarification, the siting strategy would be important if the county owns it, but if through this research, the public entity or the private entity says, I'm just gonna buy it, then we still review it because of the new landfill rules, right? So we would still have a say on it.
From public comment, it seems like the siting strategy should be located in another county.
Everyone's gonna be, not in my backyard. This is not gonna be easy, but it's necessary.
Well, that's why I asked about the process, because my colleagues don't know.
Because nobody knows want it.
Yes, I know.
But hopefully.
This is a big step, this is a huge deal, to create, now, I hope the private sector does step in.
Yeah.
But, to anticipate this is very challenging.
Yeah.
I'm a little more optimistic. Well, I think that there's an anaerobic digester proposed in St. Bernard, so public outcry on it. They're able to work it out, maybe it was just.
All right, very good.
Glimmer of hope there.
Let's just take that, yeah.
Yeah, and I did meet with them a few weeks ago, and so they are still making progress. And, but they made it clear that they will not be taking postage.
All right, so that's attachment C. Thank you, Michelle, for the work you did on that. And so then again, we're faced with this question of timing. So we're not gonna ratify today. The question is, do we want to ratify in April or ratify in May? The plan goes into place no matter what, January of next year, right?
Well, it has to be ratified and approved by Ohio EPA.
So, right,
We would
but
just continue on in our current plan.
the timing question is, do the locals have time enough to review it and put their stamp of approval on it if we do it in May?
but rather should we do it in April to give ourselves a little bit more, rather staff a little bit more time. So I'm open to a meeting in April. I don't know how the committee feels about that. We already have one scheduled for May. It would be a replacement meeting, right? We meet in April instead of May.
Is that you and your team's preference, April?
Yeah, I think April would work. I prefer to move it. We'd have to do public,
This is a longer.
post it.
I'm ready to vote on the plan right now, so April is fine.
So I think not to put you in a spot, but the longer we're able to look at and kind of digest the public comment, I'm more of a May person with it. And I think you have an added, see if, I'm including myself as a new member, 3 new members, and by the way, this stuff has a nomenclature and a language all its own, and, I'm finding this stuff, I'm pretty good with research, and I'm finding this stuff out almost on a continual basis. So the more information, I've kind of lived my life along the ideas, the more information I can get, the better. The more data I can get, the better. The more research I can get, the better. So I don't want to jam everybody up, but I'm more of a May person.
Well, and to be clear, Appendix C is the public comment, response to the public comment and policy committee comment that's been received so far, right? So we got, how many came in, public comment came in recently that's not been incorporated?
We received 15 public comments, I think, written. We had 4 public comments at the public hearing. But many of them were repeats of public comment we've had. Most of them were about the universal waste and recycling fee increase, the 2 big ones. We received quite a few about curbside organic collection, about wanting to have food scrap collection at the curb. So, I think that they've all been addressed, but there's certainly time to consider them more. And
Yeah,
If the other members are going to do May, I want to push it to early as May as possible. May 3rd. We're set at May 17th.
Probably fair.
compromise.
Compromise.
All right? So early May is what we're talking about.
I will send out a doodle poll.
We'll float it,
And we're
float it in.
trying to
All
find
right,
it.
so we're agreed though that early May, we'll have a meeting and we will ratify the plan at that meeting. And then in the meantime, Michelle, if you could, as you incorporate more public input, send it out in addition to what we've received through Appendix C. I think it's really important for this committee to know of all the changes, because we're gonna be voting on this. And I, up to looking at this, was not familiar with all the changes. So I think it's really important that we understand them all. So if you could get that information to us well in advance of the, whatever May meeting it is, so we can take a look at it and ask questions if we need to.
And for example, I know that Michelle and I are going to meet at some point to talk about household hazardous waste, and there's still some T's and I's, T's to be crossed, I's to be dotted on some of this stuff.
Okay, good.
Thank you. I appreciate the flexibility with that.
We're in May. We're doing it in May. All right, the next item on the agenda, informational items, Waste Reduction Innovation Grant update. Attachment C.
This is just information on the 2 grant proposals we've received since the last time that you met, the City of Wyoming and Civic Garden Center. Both are around organics, which is great. The City of Wyoming is going to initiate a food scrap drop-off. So that's the second community in Hamilton County that's kind of taken on a food scrap drop-off. Flooring Township was actually the first. So the City of Wyoming, that's what this grant is for. And then the Civic Garden Center, it is going to actually have a few different, it's going to be a food scrap drop-off, but they're doing the composting themselves, and they've got a few different techniques that they're trying out.
And then the next item is our upcoming meeting, which we will send out a doodle poll, get a different date, so we're not gonna deal with that item. And is there anything else for the good of the cause? Are we commissioners or members? Whatever we,
Probably committee members.
Committee members, sorry. Okay, seeing none, I'm gonna entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.